The Liberal government's gun grab program is set to cost taxpayers nearly $1 billion.
Experts are ringing the alarm bells about Canada's unsustainable levels of immigration.
A private member's bill from the Bloc Quebecois making it harder to reform Canada's supply management system passed with unanimous consent. Hello, Canada. It's Monday, June 9th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Noah Jarvis.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Originally budgeted at $200 million, the Liberal government's 2020 long gun ban is now estimated to cost taxpayers almost $1 billion. Using the Treasury Board's 2025 to 2026 main estimates and analysis compiled by the Canadian firearm magazine, Caliber estimates the updated budget now sits at $803.4 million. That would work out to costing taxpayers roughly $20,000 per firearm collected. The government's latest predictions for departmental spending included an expected transfer of $342.6 million in grants and contributions to the assault-style firearms compensation program. This $597.9 million lump sum was earmarked in the last fall economic statement for the Liberals' first three-year commitment to the buyback program. Operational costs incurred by public safety for program implementation were not included in the estimate. While the main estimates don't provide an exact estimate of these costs, the Public Safety Department's latest quarterly financial statement indicates that the buyback program bore the lion's share of the department's operating expenses year over year. This latest estimate remains conservative given that $30.8 million in new funding for public safety's operation and administrative costs is exclusively for serving the retail business aspect of the buyback program. According to public safety, that specific section of confiscation only accounts for roughly 9,000 of the 140,000 firearms that were prohibited when the legislation was initially implemented in 2020. That would amount to $3,422 in operation expenses per firearm confiscated from a business. However, many more models have been included in the years since 2020. In the final days of the Trudeau government, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau added nearly 200 additional firearm models to its mandatory buyback program. Prime Minister Mark Carney also pledged to, quote, reinvigorate the program's implementation during his election campaign. Newly appointed Public Safety Minister Gary Anand-Sanjari said that 1,000 guns had been collected since the program's inception while answering questions from Conservative MP Andrew Lawton in the House of Commons on Thursday. While Anand-Sanjari was unable to confirm the cost of each firearm collected, he did say the government now intends to collect a total of 179,000 firearms under the buyback program. We're already 5 years into this thing since it was first conceived, and we only have 1,000 guns collected or purchased by the Liberal government. And yet they aim to somehow buy 179,000, and who knows along what amount of time. Is the federal program, the buyback program, even worth all of this? All the delays, the confusion, and cost overruns that have gone into this $1 billion boondoggle, Noah?
I don't think so, and I think most Canadians would agree with me. I think that when the federal government proposes a program to the Canadian people, they should be able to transparently estimate how much this program would cost to administer and be able to effectively deliver on that promise. However, that is the complete opposite that we're getting from the Liberal government of Trudeau and Carney. We're seeing just a complete inability to actually collect these firearms and trying to put it on, say, the Canada Post to be responsible for collecting these firearms, even though I think many Canadians would transparently be able to see the problem with that. But if the federal program is going to cost this much, it's going to cost $1 billion. I think firearms owners deserve to have some more transparency on if their firearms are going to be collected or not. I know that a lot of firearms businesses, businesses that sell guns, they are having a lot of problems with a big inventory of guns they just cannot sell. So just giving those businesses some clarity over the confusion that the federal government has been pushing onto them, and really just trying to ensure that the program is able to be delivered effectively. I think that they've completely failed. So I think it's high time to just scrap the program. Many Canadians don't even agree with the goal of the program, myself included. Firearms owners and their property rights have been infringed on, and in doing so, they've created this program that is they're just unable to administer in a cost-effective manner. So I think it's time, and I think Canadians would agree to me to scrap the federal gun buyback program. But if not, just to really ensure that firearms owners are not left in this state of limbo, and to actually get the program done in a cost-effective manner. Canada is driving itself into an unsustainable cycle of mass immigration, housing of unaffordability, and per capita economic decline, a situation normally seen in poor countries, warns Madeleine Weld, president of Population Institute Canada. Weld's comments come in response to the OECD's 2025 Economic Survey of Canada, which found that the country is in a years-long per capita recession despite headline GDP growth fueled by record immigration. Quote, Canada grew itself into a population trap where population growth exceeds economic growth, a situation normally associated with poor developing countries, Weld said. In 2023, its growth rate at 3.2% exceeded that of Africa and was 5 times higher than the OECD average. She cited warnings from the National Bank of Canada and BMO Capital Markets, both of which have called Ottawa's immigration plan unsustainable. Weld suggested negligence on the part of the federal government, which had been warned in 2022 that immigration levels were too high. She also criticized former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for increasing already high immigration levels in 2017, despite his finance minister warning of a job churn among young Canadians. Quote, Canadians can take a leaf from Japan's book. Japan's population and economy have been shrinking for years because it's rapidly aging and has a low immigration rate, but it is doing much better than Canada economically in terms of services like healthcare and in terms of social cohesion, said Weld. In 2023, Canada's birth rate was 1.2 children per woman, one of the lowest rates in the world. To maintain a population, a fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman is required. With a balanced immigration rate where immigration equals emigration, Canada would have stabilized at around 27 million or 28 million, according to Weld. The OECD found that while Canada's total GDP continues to grow, real GDP per capita, a measure of individual prosperity, has fallen below pre-pandemic levels. From the start of 2015 to the end of 2023, real GDP per capita rose by just $298 or 0.5%. Weld argued that current immigration levels are driving Canada's housing crisis and eroding social cohesion. She also warned that young Canadians are being squeezed out of the labor market. Jobs normally taken by young people and those entering the job market are being taken by newcomers, many of whom are temporary residents. So, Cosmin, the federal government has been given repeated warning, not just from immigration experts, not just from economists, not just from people in highfalutin positions in civil society, but also Canadians in general. We see polls in which desire to see immigration reduced are exceeding over 50%, breaking the sort of immigration consensus that we had where Canadians prefer bringing in more immigrants. Now, the Trudeau government had flipped that dynamic on his head, and Canadians are pushing for reforms to the immigration system. So, Cosmin, will the Carney government finally make some of those much desired reforms to Canada's immigration system?
So here's the thing, even if you look at the intake targets that Carney has pledged, when you actually do the math, it's still a substantial amount of people. So for permanent residents, he said he wants to cap it at about 1% of the population. Now, if you go based on the 2021 census data of 40 million people living in Canada, that's still 400,000 people a year coming to Canada on a permanent basis. And as the population grows, that cap is going to grow alongside with it. So how is that any different than the 500,000 a year that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pledged that caused all of these problems? And additionally, Carney has failed to address some of the major loopholes that are evident in Canada's immigration system, especially when it comes to international students. which he's promised a 5% cap on. Now, 5% of Canada's population is still 2 million international students per year. So these numbers don't really sound all that great when you look at the actual quantity of people the Liberals are talking about. When they talk about percentages, when you're looking at single digits, it might sound good, but on paper, it's quite a lot of people. So the loopholes are evident when we see 20,000 asylum claims by international students in Canada, and there's been nothing done to address this. And whether the government even intends on sending these people back home, it's not really clear. It's still early on in the Carney Liberal minority government, but so far, the Liberals have not really tackled the issue of immigration to the extent they would need to solve all of the manifold problems that have emerged from this, including the housing issues, the healthcare issues, and the problems with temporary foreign workers and their impact on part-time and full-time work. And when we saw the recent labor market statistics that came out from Statistics Canada for May, it's obvious that the population is growing more than the amount of jobs our economy is producing currently. A bill sponsored by the Bloc Quebecois will make it harder to reform Canada's supply management system. The first bill passed in the House of Commons during this parliamentary session was Bill C-202. The bill, sponsored by Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, passed unanimously through the committee stage and third reading. The bill seeks to restrict the Foreign Affairs Minister and Ministry from engaging in negotiations with other countries to alter Canada's supply management system. The Foreign Affairs Minister would be prohibited from negotiating trade agreements that increase the supply management quota, allowing more imports without being hit with a tariff, or reduce the tariff rate on imports gone over quota. The legislation comes in response to concerns from supporters of supply management that the government would be willing to axe components of the system to appease U.S. President Donald Trump in trade negotiations. During the bill's second reading, the Bloc moved a motion to fast-track it through Parliament, with the Conservatives, Liberals, and NDP allowing the motion to pass without objection. The Bloc Québécois celebrated the passage of Bill C-202, touting it as an accomplishment in fulfilling the party's campaign promises. A post by the Bloc on social media reads, quote, "Our bill protecting supply management has been adopted. It's a great day for our agriculture and for the future, and for the people who get up early to put food on our tables." While the bill did not face any objection from Canada's political class, concerns remain regarding supply management and the effect that C-202 will have in preventing reforms to the system. The bill now heads to the Senate, where it must pass before becoming law. David Clement, the North American Affairs Manager at the Consumer Choice Center, told True North that supply management results in higher prices for Canadian consumers while lining the pockets of farmers. Clement said, quote, "Supply management is a system that fails to meet its core objectives. Beyond giving quota holders a substantial and inflated source of income, the cost to consumers domestically is significant. Canadian consumers pay 20 to 30% more for milk than Americans do." Noah, why is it the case that it seems like all of Canada's political parties are aligned when it comes to supply management? There isn't a major elected federal party that opposes, or rather wants to scrap, supply management.
Right. I think the only party that opposes the supply management system is the People's Party of Canada, and they received less than 1% of the vote in the past election. So it's not exactly like uh, anti-supply management parties are particularly popular in Canada. And I think that the political parties, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, they are all in favor of the supply management system because they are, I guess, doing the political calculus that they will lose more voters than they will gain in opposing the supply management system. As David Clement noted, there's a notable constituency, farmers who are very dependent on the supply management system. system for delivering them over inflated profits. And the reforms to the supply management system, or scrapping the system entirely, really seeks to potentially harm their industry, harm their way of making money, and open them up to competition either from the United States or other places. So I think that the supply management system, especially for the Bloc Quebecois, where over half of supply managed farms are located, it's definitely something that the Bloc Quebecois wants to support in order to gain those voters for themselves. But when it comes to the effects that the supply management system has on Canadians in general, it does increase the price of certain dairy products and other supply managed products. The reason why Canadians pay for some of the most expensive milk on the planet, a lot more expensive compared to the milk that Americans get on their store shelves, is because of the supply management system, because these farmers are protected from competition. The supply of milk and other supply managed products are artificially reduced, therefore artificially driving up the price for these products. And, during the time in which Canadians are going through a cost of living crunch, I don't really think it's that implausible for a Canadian political party to gain votes by opposing the supply management system, by saying that this would be a measure to improve affordability at the grocery store. And sure, maybe you might lose some votes from farmers if you're the Conservative Party, looking at your support in rural Canada, but you can also gain voters in other parts of the country that might not have voted for you, but are now going to vote for you because of the renewed commitment to affordability. I think this is also something that the NDP could look at, since their parliamentary caucus had been completely wiped out in the last election. They might feel as if they have to change course, change strategy, change the type of voters who they seek to talk to, and perhaps oppose the supply management system to gain some of those voters back that they had lost to the Liberals. So it remains to be seen whether or not this political consensus will hold up. But the fact that Bill C 202 had been able to pass through Parliament without any debate, and with the complete support of all parties in Parliament, really shows that we're a ways away from a Canada in which the supply management issue is on the table.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.